All right. So on this one, if you are a clown millennial who has thoughts of hatred of capitalism and thinks that we are now living in late stage capitalism, I am here to take a big flaming, steaming hot pile of dookie on you. Oh, but you're not alone. I'm coming after all you broke ass boomers who ain't gonna leave your kids nothing, 'cause you're gonna be broke as hell. Like everybody is broke as hell. I'm coming after all of you clowns who wonder why day after day the rent keeps going up and you just keep buying stuff that just keeps getting more expensive by the day. Well, I'm going to explain it all. I'm going to explain everything about why you hate capitalism and why you're not even living under capitalism because you're too dumb to understand anything whatsoever about money that would allow you to, let's see here, escape late stage capitalism. I wish I could get out of late stage capitalism. I wish I could own a house. Wait. To even own, we'll get into this later. Alright, so, this is the video, well, one of many videos where I confirm that I know infinitely more than all of you put together. And if you line me up in front of an entire stadium of 150,000 people, you couldn't find any one person in there that could outdo me in terms of thinking power. And if you stacked all your bullshit educations up side by side, one against another, and all of them stacked on top of each other and measured up against me, well, you wouldn't get anywhere either, because the sum of all of your knowledge is actually a blockade in the way. Well, the sum of what you deem to be your knowledge, what you paid to be told is knowledge, when in actuality it is not knowledge, never was, never will be, but you think it is all day long, and you've been calling me a conspiracy wacko over it for about 10 years. But the good thing about that is, now you're all fucking poor, now you're all going broke, now you're all paying $9 a dozen for a thing of eggs, so I'm going to tell you why. Alright, so the reason you're all poor and hate capitalism is very, very simple. Well, you're poor and you hate capitalism because you have accepted a fiat currency in exchange for your labor. So, oh wait, there's more, I forgot. I forgot to tell you. This ironically is also why you're not living under capitalism. Because for there to be capitalism, you have to have a sound money currency backing up the capitalism. If you have a fiat debt note representing a currency, if you have a fiat debt note representing money, you aren't using money. That means that, well, we'll get into this later. I'm gonna leave it at that for right now anyway. Okay, so for capitalism to exist, you can't have fiat money. Fiat money can't be capitalism for a variety of reasons, the main one being that capitalism requires real money. Like, if you're paying for your things with something that's not real money, then you're not actually paying for and buying these things that you think you own. You're doing no such thing, and you haven't ever been in the first place. We'll go into it later. Fiat itself is a corporate monopoly, so the things that you hand over to other people in exchange for what you deem to be goods that you own, well, see, that is part of a corporate monopoly that exists within itself. This is fairly complicated. It's going to go over a lot of your heads. But for capitalism to even exist, you have to operate under a system that is based upon individual rights. Okay, so if you understand what individual rights are, well, you would know that labor is one of these rights. Basically, a right is anything that you have the action to do to make your life improve. And labor is the main source of this, because to get anything at all whatsoever, you have to labor to get it. Like, to me, to bend down, I have to labor to bend down and touch that. So, like, labor is basically everything. And when you have allowed yourself to be taxed upon just for your labor alone, which is illegal and is a dead giveaway that you are not living under a constitutional sovereign republic. Because if you are being taxed upon your labor, that means you have forfeited your rights as a human being. Okay, so like, if you're being taxed upon labor, that means you forfeited your natural rights. And the entire conception of capitalism from start to finish is based upon the individual's right to use their labor to make their life better. That's like capitalism 101. So if you're being taxed on the very existence of your labor, you're clearly not living under capitalism, and you're living under some sort of feudal entity that is hog-tying you and horse-fucking you at every turn. Okay, so for capitalism to even exist, you've got to have a lawful money system in place, which we do not have. If you take out a dollar bill, I should have grabbed one for this video, but you look at the top of any dollar bill, it says Federal Reserve Note right on it, which basically means that note, well, okay, and also a note is itself is an instrument of debt. So the very fact that it says note on your money means instrument of debt. So like when you think you're buying something, you hand over a green paper that says note on it. That note is an instrument of debt. Debt to who, you ask? Well, the issuer of the currency itself, which in this case is also right on the money. It says Federal Reserve Note. So that Federal Reserve is who issues the note. So anything that you exchange this note for belongs to that Federal Reserve who issued the existing note that you're using. And when you really dig into how this Federal Reserve issued this note, well, that's how you could dig into this not being sound money and therefore it not being capitalism, because they haven't issued it in a sound manner. Your so-called money, which is actually a Federal Reserve note, is an issuance of credit to you. It doesn't in any way whatsoever represent money. It doesn't have anything backing it. There's five main things that qualify something as money, and the Federal Reserve Note, by the very nature of it being a note, cannot have anything backing it. And it doesn't take a whole lot of research to figure out that your Federal Reserve Notes have nothing backing them whatsoever. So again, it's not capitalism. If you did want to pretend this misery you're living under is capitalism, well, you're right to that, but that is also known as insanity. And that would make you an insane person, which basically all of you are, by virtue of accepting a meaningless piece of paper in exchange for your labor, and then also agreeing to be taxed upon your labor on top of that. So, like, not only are you exchanging your labor for a worthless piece of paper, that anything that you obtain using this paper is actually owned by the issuer of the credit note that you just used that you claim to have obtained this good with. So, like, it's kind of like the old joke about nachos. You don't eat ballpark nachos. You only rent them. Well, it's kind of like you with your house. You don't own your house, no matter how many slips of green Federal Reserve Note paper you use to pay for it, because the issuer of the Federal Reserve Note is the owner of that house. You're only renting it through the issuer of that credit note. And by their grace of their niceties, they've let you use it for all this time. But that's going to come to an end. See, it all comes to an end when the issuer of the credit notes comes and tries to make you pay up for them. And that day is coming soon, because the whole thing is built on a Ponzi, and it's built upon this idea that we're going to get to an end where they're going to come and take everything at the end. They kind of just been letting you build a whole bunch of crap for them in the meantime. And also, we kind of have guns, so they can't really just come in here and take everything like they could have done a long time ago. But they're going to come do it soon. The issuers of these notes will be coming through soon, and will be here to either say, oh, take all our stuff, or your whole thing was built on fraud. Fuck you. We're going to put a cap in you. You're done. It's one of the two things. One of those two things is coming. We'll see which way it goes. I'm hoping for putting a cap in them and arresting them all for the fraud and treason that they put over on us. But it's really not actually fraud and treason, because you imbeciles have actually volunteered your lives to this nonsense. So, I mean, this is fairly complicated, but when you claim to purchase a home or a vehicle or whatever, or even your clothing on your back, like this right here, I purchased this with some Federal Reserve notes. I don't own this. I don't own these pants. I don't own anything. Nobody owns anything. Nobody in the world owns anything whatsoever. except for the issuers of these bullshit Federal Reserve notes that you claim to be hard-earned cash. They ain't cash, never were, never will be. They're a security. If you understand anything about a security, well, it can't be used as money. Securities aren't money. They're two different things entirely. And the thing that you have accepted as quote-unquote money is actually a worthless security issued by a creditor who has nothing backing it. And that's pretty fucking stupid to do. Okay, so I kind of covered everything I wanted to cover in regards to the ownership aspect. But, okay, so since you don't actually know what real money is in the first place, like if I asked any of you what a dollar is, I would get a million different answers and they would all be wrong. They would all be unbelievably, laughably, stupidly wrong. And I could laugh in your face if I wanted to at how dumb you are. But I'll skip that over. I've been doing that for a while now. That hasn't really got anybody anywhere, so I'm going to try something else here. But okay, so if you don't know what real money is in the first place, you can't even take these bullshit, phony Federal Reserve notes that you're ignorantly accept as payment and convert them into real money so that your wealth doesn't dry up and leave you, let's see here, wondering where all of your supposedly earned wealth went over the years. Well, you would have known where it went had you converted any of that into something that actually is substantial wealth that can't lose value over time. Like, say, gold and silver coin, which is historically known to be money. Anybody with half a brain understands all of the all of the factual nature of gold, which makes it an acceptable form of exchange medium. Okay, so the fact that you're not using this, and this is actually going to go into another broader subject on the topic. So, most of the reason that you're all losing your wealth is obviously, I've covered this, you're accepting a fiat currency for it. But what you don't realize probably so far is that when you accept this fiat currency, well, it's constantly losing its value over time. So every single day that you hold a fiat currency, the value of it goes down. Since the inception of the Federal Reserve note in 1913, the value of the US dollar has lost 98% of its value, which means you have like less than 2% of the purchasing power of a person who was born 110 years ago. It's no wonder you're poor when you realize that the value of what you deem to be money is actually losing its value every day that you hold it, and has lost 98% of its value over its lifespan. So whatever your grandparents were using with the same money that you are, well, it was worth roughly 50 times what the money you're using is worth today, because of the compounded inflation effect of the same worthless money being used and used by people over time and over time and over time. The more time that passes when you use this worthless currency, the more worthless it becomes. So, as your parents have passed down from working a job where they could afford a giant house on a single salary, working as a shoe salesman or whatever it is, well, the only reason that they were ever able to do that is because they were using something that was much closer to sounder money. Their money hadn't lost all of its value yet, so they could actually use some of the purchasing power that it had to make their lives better. See, you're now at the tail end of the experiment where the dollar that you're using has lost 98% of its value. So it's not hard to understand why your rent is so high, why property prices have skyrocketed to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, a house doesn't amount to anything but basically a box with an air intake and air outtake added to it, and not a whole lot else. I mean, there's a little more to it than that, but the fact that these things have skyrocketed up to $300,000 for like 1,200 square foot house or something like that, well, it doesn't have anything to do with any of these housing shortages. And quite frankly, if we actually had sound money like I've been talking about here, you would easily be able to afford a house the same way your parents afforded a house. Even under the regressive policies of the Federal Reserve that constantly devalued their dollar, it still held enough of its original value for them to make great use of it as a tool. and that's why it hasn't been phased out up until, well, what we can only hope to be the coming years, because it has to be phased out. And if it is not phased out and it is replaced by a central bank digital currency and we don't have an actual gold-backed dollar given to us, well, we're all going to live as slaves. Nobody's ever going to own anything ever. And the only way we're ever going to get to a point where any of you can ever comfortably own anything, including all you broke-ass boomers out here now who aren't going to leave your grandparents anything at all, or your grandkids anything at all, because, let's see here, you lost all of the value of everything you ever worked for by not converting it out of a fiat currency into a sound money that can't lose its value. And because of that, you're now a broke boomer who can't afford to leave your child anything at all, because most of you aren't getting shit from your parents. Like you think you are. You aren't gonna. Promise you that, for the most of you anyway. And even if you do, if we don't go to an actual sound money system, there's no point for you inheriting it anyways, because at that point we'll be going into MMT, and you're just gonna live as a slave at that point. That's for another video though. Alright, so, I mean, I kind of went over this already, but to actually own something, you have to pay for it with what is lawful money. So, if you don't pay for what you think you own with lawful money, you can't own it. I mean, I kind of went over this with the whole issuance of the credit by the Federal Reserve itself, and that they own anything that is bought with the currency, or the credits issued by the Federal Reserve. And this is kind of going back into why your parents have never gotten ahead and why they're going to die broke complaining about the same inflation you're complaining about, even though they had more than enough chances to convert all of their fake money into real wealth assets that would store and maintain the original value that they held. So, like, if your parents had, say, taken all of the original wealth that they earned back in the 1970s and placed it into something like gold that didn't lose its value, well, they'd be rich as hell right now. They would have kept the original value of the dollars that they earned, but instead they kept them housed in things like stocks and other nonsensical options similar to stocks that are reliant upon the Federal Reserve monetary system, which ensures the loss of value of your so-called money to be guaranteed over time. And right now we're living through the end of it, which is why you can't own anything, which is why you really truly work for like $4 an hour after you factor every tax that you pay into it and all of the factors of inflation that you pay. So, like, even if you're getting like a $15 an hour job, unless you're converting that money into something that's going to hold its value, you're basically accepting like a $5 an hour wage, and you're wasting all of your life working for that. But, I mean, you don't really have another choice at this point, because you don't know about any of this whatsoever. Okay, so anything that you do claim to own, it can be called in, the true ownership of it can be called in by the issuer of the credits that you use to purchase it, which basically means that, like, and that it actually includes anybody who believes they've paid off a mortgage or anything like that. If you're still paying a property tax upon a property, you don't own that property, and that right there is proof of it, the fact that you're paying a property tax for it. You have never obtained true ownership. You can look at the title for your home. It says certificate of title. Same thing with your automobile. It says certificate of title. The true holder of the title is the state itself, and that's fairly easy to dig through if you really want to. Because of the fact that you need to use lawful money to make any purchase of anything you truly own to actually satisfy the conditions of ownership to justify protection of the law. Well, like, since you're not doing it, or since you're not actually using lawful money, you have no claim to ownership whatsoever that would justify protection of the law. This is just yet another roundabout which makes the United States Constitution null and void. It could actually apply to you if you would have paid for some of your property that you claim to own with lawful money, but you never have. So therefore, you've never been subject to Fourth Amendment protections. You've never been subject to Seventh Amendment protections. I'm forgetting the other ones offhand. I think those might just be the two, but you've forfeited your constitutional protection, or you've forfeited all protection to constitutional and amendments in the act of accepting a fiat currency to quote unquote purchase what you claim to have ownership to. So this is the reason nobody ever wins in the court systems, is because you don't actually have ownership of what you think you own. So therefore, nothing about the courts justifies providing you with protection of the law for your property. So like when you complain about some sort of Fourth Amendment violation of some sort of person that did something wrong, or whatever it may be, you don't just remember that you don't have the protection of the Fourth Amendment in the first place, nor do you have the protection of the Seventh Amendment, because you have never, well, for starters, you have a bank account. That alone disqualifies you. But there's so many other things to it, such as you've never used lawful money to pay for anything that a court system could provide you protection to. Like, even if you, well, I'll just leave it at that. So the second half of this one, I mean, not only are you enslaved by the fact that you somehow believe that a fiat currency could be used as money or could hold value like money can hold value or should hold value. Well, not only are you losing all of the value of any money you've ever earned because of the fact that it's constantly being devalued by the constant printing of this meaningless non-asset that will never be an asset, that could never be an asset, that could never even be used to obtain you assets whatsoever. So not only are you doing that, but also you're actually voluntarily subjecting yourself to a tax upon labor, which is supposed to be unconstitutional and unlawful, but through a series of predicaments, you have placed yourself into a position where you are provided no protections of law whatsoever, and because of that, you are easily subjected to something like a tax upon your labor, which can only be done against you by voluntary actions upon your part. No state in the world can lawfully impose. Well, okay, actually, I'm not sure about. No state in the world can lawfully impose a tax upon labor. You can only voluntarily subject yourself to a tax upon labor, and you can really only do this by pauperizing yourself to the government that you claim is protecting your rights when it's not, and it has actually pauperized you through a variety of means. But main one being that you're allowing a tax upon your labor to take place. Labor is a basic fundamental right as a human being. If you have allowed yourself to be taxed upon your labor, that means you have forfeited all of your rights as a human being, and you no longer have human rights because you have forfeited them. Okay, so not only are you working until about the month of June every single year of your life, you're working for free until June because of tax upon labor, which in almost all countries it amounts to more than 50% of your wages. Not quite, but even if it doesn't, I'm gonna go into why it's all of the various taxes upon you are way above 50%, and pretty much everybody in the world is actually paying an 80% tax. So not only are you voluntarily working for the state to pay for the state's wants and needs for 6 months of the year, you're also voluntarily, through ignorance, agreeing to pay for a huge variety of other taxes, which raise your actual tax rate well above 80%. Okay, so just in America alone, the price of gas is 85% tax minimum. So that means every tank of gas you fill up, the cost of that price is 85% taxes, most of which are unnecessary boondoggles, which don't in any way go to fund help for anybody in your nation, and also do not even cover the fixing of the roads. Only a very small portion of gas taxes actually goes back to fix the roads. Most of it is siphoned off into the pockets of, well, what we could call the swamp, but a lot of people don't want to talk about that one. So that's just one example of yet another tax that raises your actual tax rate far above what you think it is. And after all of Social Security and income tax in America is applied, that alone, right? Just Social Security and income tax is at least 50% tax on basically everybody. But then, you add in the 85% tax on gasoline, which also goes into the price of every item of food you buy at the grocery store. So if 85% of the price of tax is gasoline, and a good portion of the price of the food you eat is getting the food to the store itself, well, that means most of the price you're paying to get food to the store is just the tax on gasoline to get it to the store in the first place. So that's one of a million examples of a tax you're paying that you unnecessarily, or that you don't even realize you're paying, but is cutting into everything you think you own and making you poor and stupid and a big NASCAR fan. No, I'm just kidding there. But, okay, so and then on top of this, just like the income tax itself, you can only subject yourself to a lot of these taxes voluntarily. Most of these taxes that raise your tax rate up above 80% and will keep you perpetually poor for the rest of your life because you don't have the balls in your sack to say, no, I'm not paying income tax because I know that it's voluntary, just based on extremely rudimentary understanding of the law, which says that natural rights cannot be lawfully taxed by the state. So just because you don't have the balls to stand up to that and your balls haven't dropped yet, well, that's part of the reason you're never going to get ahead and why you're poor, and you will be poor in all of perpetuity until you rise up and tell the government, fuck you, I'm not using your bullshit Federal Reserve notes ever again, and I'm getting out of your system once and for all. Until you do that, well, you're going to remain poor, and you're going to be complaining about late-stage capitalism and about how all the boomers screwed you, even though the parents of the boomers are the ones who implemented this garbage into existence in the first place. The boomers have been bamboozled and brainwashed with the same nonsense you have, so stop blaming them. Remember how nice your grandparents were? Remember how much of pushovers your grandparents were and how they got you everything? Well, there's two things about that. Part of the reason is they had such a financial abundance that they could buy any damn thing they please. Because if you think about the existence of the U.S. dollar in history, well, the point in which it was robbed of all of its value, it was fucking unbelievably worth. What you could do with the dollar at 100% of its value is mind-boggling. You wonder why your parents were so or your stupid grandparents that put you into this slavery were so nice. Well, the reason they were so nice is because they didn't have to worry about a thing in the world. Because the dollar back then was so strong, you could buy anything you want with it and never have to worry about anything ever again. If we had that same dollar in place today, you could work a 10-hour work week and make more than your parents made and be wealthier than your parents were, than your stupid boomer parents were at any point of their lives of wealth, where they could just blow it constantly and still be fairly well off. Well, see, if we had that same dollar in place that the stupid people who were born and alive in the late 1800s and early 1900s that strapped us into this system of slavery of fiat currency, well, yeah, if we had their dollar, none of you would be worried about anything. You'd be as nice as they were, and you'd be as big a pushovers as they were. It kind of goes into the whole strong times create weak men thing. Weak men create hard times create strong men. That's always an endless cycle. Well, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, ever, because we should have an understanding of things that keep it from being a cycle of absolute nonsense. But, yep, instead, we're just going to keep creating weak men to create hard times so strong men like me come around and have to fix it. And we'll see what we get done from here. We might all be cooked for eternity, but we'll have to see. Okay, so I kind of gotten into this, but small taxes on all your purchases add up incredibly quickly. And basically what's gone on over all this time, like the reason the corporations have all of this wealth and all of this power is that they've been avoiding small taxes on exchange of items that through doing it in-house. So like a giant corporation creates the entire supply chain from start to finish pretty much by their own making. So they don't have to get taxed at the point of sale of every of every piece of material that goes into their end product. So like when you have a small business, say doing something like chrome plating, if you have a small chrome plating business, you get taxed on every purchase of every item you need to do business. But if, for instance, you have a giant corporation that does chrome plating, which isn't exactly likely because chrome plating is kind of a specialized operation. But at the end of the day, you're still getting meaninglessly taxed at the point of sale, whereas a giant corporation, that anything they would like to produce, they can avoid the point of sale taxations on everything that they need in the supply chain to make their product and at the end goal a reality. Whereas a small business is constantly pummeled with taxation that is just constantly adding up and adding to the cost of business, which makes it so that they can never compete. So when your complacency in various things like, let's see here, letting half of your income go to a voluntary tax that you don't have to pay in the first place, well, it's going to be pretty easy for a corporation to get ahead on you because they don't have to pay any of these taxes. And the same thing goes with putting together any product on the marketplace whatsoever. If you're being taxed at the point of sale for everything you need to buy to make your end product a goal or a reality, I mean, if you're being taxed at that, you can't compete with any corporation. And at any point whatsoever in which you get a profitable business model, well, it's going to get swept out from under you because you don't have a giant corporation backing you that can avoid point of sale taxations that you can't avoid as a small business. So that's just yet another part of small taxations that are adding up to enslave you, on top of the fact that your money is being inflated on a day-to-day basis. So even if you take out a lot of this stuff about even if we got sound money, we would still have to completely overhaul the tax code and everything in regards to the tax code to eliminate all of this needless taxation on small business, to allow it to compete with corporations who have somehow gotten themselves to be identified as the same as an individual. But the reason that happened is because you forfeited all of your individual rights in the past. Since you have forfeited your individual rights through things like allowing yourself to be taxed for your labor, well, that's what has allowed a corporation to obtain the same status as an individual that you have. Through ignorance of a variety of factors, you have pauperized yourself to a government, which has allowed the government to make you into the same corporate status as these corporations that you claim to hate. Like, everything about you is represented as a corporation to these same corporations that you hate. They're actually trading your birth certificate like a stock certificate, and you have no idea that they're doing this. Essentially, your complacency leads to you volunteering yourself to be poor and then asking the government to make you poorer while you claim that everything that they're doing is working towards helping poor people. Like, there's this big push right now towards equity and racial justice and all of this nonsense. But in reality, the only way you could ever obtain equity or justice of any kind is by installing a sound money system into your nation. Until you do this, you're forever going to be poor, and every instance of public hate you put forth towards the rich is only going to end up making you poorer. The only thing that can get you out of poverty and can get you into the house you always dreamed that you would own is by reinstalling a sound money system into your nation. Till you do that, all of your whining and belly aching about the rich doesn't mean anything, and it never will. Pretty much what happens is actually the rich you claim to hate, all of your money that you pay in tax, it doesn't actually go to help your nation. Like, I've been over this on a couple other things, but like, every single dollar that you pay in income tax, that's half of your yearly earnings, are paid only out to the shareholders of the Federal Reserve System that's issuing you the money in the first place. So not only are they issuing worthless money to you, they're also it's too funny, but they're also taxing you on your labor. And every dollar paid in the form of federal income tax is paid straight into the pockets of the shareholders of the Federal Reserve Bank. So whoever these shareholders, they're actually unknown. It was actually built into the law of the Federal Reserve System that the shareholders of the bank, it's the granddaddy Federal Reserve Bank itself, and there's I think there's like 13 different regional branches or something like that. But all of the shareholders of these banks, well, they're the ones taking all the money for your income tax. So like, even if you're a really cool, nice guy or a real nice young lady who really wants to help those poor young minorities get out of poverty, well, your money isn't going to that. Sorry to tell you that. Half of your income every single year, that's 6 months that I mentioned that you work for free every single year, well, that money is going straight into the pockets of the rich people that you claim to hate. And even if you're somehow happy with volunteering to pay half of your yearly income for a voluntary tax that you don't have to pay, so like, even if you agree with that and want your money to go to the government to help the poor and to help whoever gets the help that they need, well, half of your income is being taxed and taken directly out of the tax base and never once put forth any taxpayer-funded project whatsoever, and it never will be. So every single year of your life, you're paying half of your income for a federal income tax that goes back to help nobody in your nation. Nobody in America has access to one dime of the money paid into the Federal Reserve System. It is all paid straight into the pockets of the shareholders of the Federal Reserve Banks. So, even if you had these grandiose ideas in your head about helping the poor, you're not helping the dang poor. You're putting your money straight into the pockets of the wealthy you hate. Okay, so, yep, and that applies to every single system of tax that you can think of. They're all boondoggles. 95 cents out of every $1 that you send to Washington, D.C. gets washed over and wasted. It's literally laundered like a drug dealer would launder money. They're laundering all of the federal tax payments that come into Washington, D.C. and handing you 5 cents back worth of your own money in terms of benefits. So even the lawful taxes that you're paying, you're not actually seeing any benefit from it, because 95% of the money that you're paying on these taxes is greasing the wheels of a federal bureaucrat that you don't know exists. This is what is called the swamp. It's a fairly simple thing to understand, but somehow you don't realize that the absurd amount of money that you're paying towards Washington, D.C., only to see it do nothing for you, you somehow think that it's being used wisely, and it's not. It's fairly easy through a basic accounting audit of this, that 95% of every dollar you send them is getting wiped on some. You might as well just set it on fire, because it's not helping anybody. Every single dream you've ever had of helping anybody secure anything with your tax payments is an absolute nonsensical, meaningless, has no place in reality whatsoever, dog shit vision of grandiosity that you've created in your own mind. Alright, so again, I mean, that's pretty much the end of what I wanted to say about why you're poor, but I'm going to go into a couple of various topics here that are kind of just random things here. The first one being, none of you ever lived under capitalism. All 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto have been installed in America since the 1960s, at the latest. So that means that we've had all 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto installed in America since before JFK got into office in 1961, I think it was. It was late. Oh no, he was November 1960. Yeah, he was January 1961. So all the planks of the Communist Manifesto have been installed in America for over 60 years. You can have capitalism when all 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto have been installed already. Oh, and the joke of the problem okay, the joke of the problem about socialism is they often will make this claim that the problem with socialism is that you run out of other people's money, and that's just completely wrong. Socialism is actually designed by the wealthy elite. So, in this instance, think the shareholders of the Federal Reserve Banks of America. Those people, those people actually built running out of money into the design of socialism, because that way they can come back in at the end and claim despotic power over you. We're already long past the point. We're already long past the point of running out of other people's money. At this point, we're running on just total nonsense. I mean, I don't even know how the economy's still running, if I'm being honest with you. It should have collapsed a long time ago. So what we're running on now is long past running out of people's money. I don't even know how it's still functioning. But there's a lot of economists who will tell you that the can has been kicked down the road numerous times now with things like the bailouts in 2008, which we're about to find out hard, big time hard, well, what that did and what a bail-in is. You might want to look into what a bail-in is now that they've already had bailouts. Okay, so essentially right now is we're at the crossroads right now. If we don't take the lump on the head and let them essentially what is the equivalent of getting beaten on the head with a hammer and thrown into extreme poverty for a couple of years while we allow a sound money system to be installed, well, we're at a crossroads where we're going to end up in slave chains if we don't do that. So if we don't overthrow this Federal Reserve System and install a sound money system and actually go through the hardships over the couple of years that it will take before the sound money bet pays off for us, well, we're done. We're going to live as slaves. So we're going to have to rip this bandage off now and live as poor as we've ever known ourselves to live, or poorer than we've ever dreamed ourselves of living for the foreseeable future until the sound money system is able to take off and everybody's able to take advantage of all of the facets of accumulation of wealth that a sound money system would allow the individual to obtain. Alright, so, I mean, as it stands now, the crap in your wallet, the green stuff, the Federal Reserve note, the 20 spot, yeah, that's not even worth the paper it's printed on. It's actually, like I've already told you, it represents a debt. If you actually hold that debt note, you are enslaved to the issuer of that debt note, and you just don't know it. So, kind of gone over most of this already. Oh no, I'm on the wrong page, I think, here. Yes, no, it's about the same page done over again, but I'm getting to the end here. I already went over that. Went over that. Okay, I'm pretty much done. I think the only thing I have to add here is the fraud of the Social Security number is really the only thing that needs to be explored beyond the concept of outing fiat currency as what it is. You also must get rid of the Social Security number. The Social Security number itself is the tool for the pauperization of the individual, which strips you of your rights. When you have accepted the Social Security number, that right there is the mechanism that has triggered the elimination of your rights as a person. You gave them away, and accepting that Social Security number is how you did it. You signed up for all of that. So, I mean, hey, I just explained why you're poor, why you don't own anything, why your boomer parents ain't leaving you shit, why you don't got shit, why you never have shit, until you get a sound money system in place. And if you want to argue with me on this, I really don't give a shit, because it doesn't mean anything to me. I know more than you do. And what I do know for a fact, the one thing I do know for a fact, Jesus Christ told me this one, but your rewards are actually in heaven. So worrying about all this money crap and this stuff that money can buy you, like this fine Gianni Versace shirt that I'm wearing, well, it's all meaningless. You can't take it with you when you're gone. And Jesus Christ already told you it has nothing in the world to do whatsoever with your rewards that await you if you have chosen those rewards in the afterlife. Most of you have not. and actually, ironically, who you have chosen the opposite path to rewards in the afterlife through your, let's say here, egoistic love of money and all that is money, which is ironic because none of you know what money is. Not one of you knows what money is. Not one of you has ever purchased anything in your life with money. You've never touched money except for by dumb luck or on accident. If you have touched real and lawful money in your life, it has been by accident. And then you sit back and wonder why you're poor. And you wonder why I don't waste my life working away at the clip of an 80% tax rate to buy a bunch of meaningless crap that basically leaves me in a position where my riches in the afterlife, or the wealth that I have accumulated for myself in the afterlife, is in jeopardy, which is what all of you have done. I have not. So I have not jeopardized my wealth in the afterlife through my endless search for wealth in this here, I don't know what to call it really, but this here life that is a facade, and it's only a test on you to see what your true nature as a human being is. Most of you have failed this test and fallen for greed, and your eternal rest is in peril because of this lust for greed that you have. Lust is the wrong word, I believe, because that's a sexual desire. But bottom line is, you and your, well, they made a whole South Park episode about this one with the space cash and the baby Frogs McGee sacks and whatnot. Yeah, see, this whole rat race game we're playing, like, it's, I don't know what to tell you, it's not real. The fact that you're actually jeopardizing your eternal soul to play in this meaningless rat race so you can maybe, like, what do you say, I've been using a Corvette as an example a lot lately, and ironically, President Fucko here has his classified documents in his Corvette. But say you have this goal of obtaining, say, a nice 2-story house and a nice pool to relax in with a Corvette in the garage. Well, you ain't never going to get there because of everything I've ever said before this and everything I've ever been called crazy for knowing. And you're also never going to be able to enjoy that Corvette or in that pool that you want to buy because you've essentially sold yourself out to a desire for money that has made you non-human in your chase for this money. You might think of yourself as a human entity, but you have shown no signs of compassion for the human race whatsoever. Every single one of you has responded in the exact same manner in any attempt I have ever embarked upon to make any of this known to you. I will be attacked relentlessly for this video, most likely anyway, and I have been relentlessly attacked at any attempt I have ever made whatsoever to make any of this known to anybody. All of you have attacked me endlessly over all of this, and it really doesn't mean anything to me because, like I said at the end of the day, it's your soul that's on the line here, not mine. I have seen through the facade of wealth and earthly possessions, and you have not. And part of the reason for that is because, well, I guess I'll just leave it at that. But, see, if you really want to make your life here in this world that you're living in now, in this physical existence where you chase this wealth, and you want this wealth to benefit you in this earthly realm, well, if you really want to make it worthwhile for you, you should probably start studying up on everything I'm saying about fiat currency. Because until you do that, you will be poor. You will grow poorer as the days pass. You will never accumulate wealth. You will never be able to, in any way whatsoever, look back at your honest day's work and say you were fairly compensated for doing so. Until you have demanded that you be paid in lawful money, you will never obtain a freedom of mind of any kind. At least in regards to any people who chase wealth as their main goal in life. For those of us like me who do not seek to chase wealth to impress others and know that our riches await us in the afterlife, well, keep doing what you're doing. But for those of you who would like to make this world here better, and stop complaining about the world you're living in. It's going to take some education on your part. In the very moment that you spend maybe 20 hours a week for a couple of weeks out of maybe a year or so, if we were all to do that and all educate ourselves on the topic of sound money, and then we're able to take this education that we've given ourselves and force the state to provide us with a system of sound money, which will allow us to finally prosper economically the way we should have been prospering over all this time that we've been working ourselves to the bone. Well, see, if you want to make that existence better, you're going to have to install a sound money system. And until you do that, you're fucked. Until you install sound money, you're just going to keep complaining about being poor, and you're just going to keep calling me a conspiracy theorist for knowing this. So what you should do is shut the fuck up, sit down, pick up the books and all of the references that I have for you, and study them until your eyes are bleeding. And then go to sleep and study them until your eyes are bleeding some more. Because until you do this, you're never going to get anything worthwhile in this physical existence out of this life. You're only going to be taxed into a miserable existence, and you're only going to be enslaved hopelessly with no chance of ever raising children who ever had it any better than you did. It's only ever going to get worse and worse and worse, and it's only going to be a sadistic nightmare if you allow this to go to its end stage. We're right now at the crossroads in history where we either kill fiat currency once and for all and live through the hard times that the elimination of this bullshit currency that we ignorantly call money has brought upon us, or we go into slave chains where we don't ever have anything to call our own ever again, and all of the writing is on the wall for this taking place as we speak now. We can see it in modern monetary theory. We can see it in Eat the Bugs and You'll Own Nothing and Be Happy. We can see it in the price of eggs rising to $9 and beef rising to $50 a pound. Yeah, well, you know, most of the reason for that, well, I guess I'll just leave it at that. You want to keep this fucking miserable charade going where you can't afford anything? Well, then keep being ignorant of sound money. And if you want to escape slave chains and live free and live on the fruits of your own labor for the first time in your life, well, then join me in educating everybody you know on the topic of sound money. Because until we do that, we're all going to be slaves.